welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 174, and today's date is September 27, 2013, and the title of this episode is We're Not Some Bananic Republic. This is not a deadbeat nation, and again, this is from President Obama when he was giving one of his speeches on how the U.S. Always pays its bills. We're not one of those nations that can't pay its bills, but if you really think about it, the only way the U.S. can pay its bills is by borrowing money. They can't pay it on the revenue they collect from the American people. The only way they can keep government going is to borrow more money. So, in fact, the U.S. is a deadbeat nation, because if this nation was able to work and prosper on its own, it wouldn't have to borrow money. And what really happened is the U.S. reached its credit card limit, and they're looking to get another credit card because the income they're bringing in from the people is not enough to keep the government and all the programs and all the billions of dollars they send over to Egypt and Israel and Yemen and all these different places to keep the empire going and keep all these countries under control, and having all these countries use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. It's very expensive to do this, and if you notice, whenever they talk about shutting down the government or sequester or anything like that, it never has anything to do with the amount of money they're sending overseas to countries like Syria, to the rebels, paid mercenaries, and they're funding them with billions of dollars to overthrow a government. But before I get started, I just want to thank all those new people who've started listening from YouTube or who've heard from me from other places. Welcome, and the site is, just feel free to go around and look at the site. The economic collapse tab up top is the timeline of the economic collapse, and I have other tabs and stuff up there, and you can just take a look around and look at different things. And I put Sentinel alerts up during the day. If you just click on the tab Sentinel alerts, it'll bring you to another page, or you can click on the home page where it says more Sentinel alerts, and I try to comment on all the different articles and things that I find. And for those people who've donated, I really do appreciate it. Yesterday, some people have emailed me with they said they had problems getting onto the site. I don't know what happened yesterday, but I was in touch with the host, and it was just being bombarded by different things, and the processes were running haywire, and they helped me control it, and they are looking into what happened, and I have no clue what happened. At this time, they're going to let me know. And for some people, it slowed down. Other people, it was fine. I couldn't even get onto it at the time, and that's why I had to contact them. And that's why my report was a little bit later than normal. But let's get into the economic collapse news. Italy right now is having major problems. Standard & Poor's warned of further downgrade by one notch or more if Italy could not demonstrate institutional and governance effectiveness. And right now, the Italian sovereign debt is just 2 notches above junk anyhow. And we can see that all these countries in Europe, Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, Cyprus, Greece, all having problems, all have huge amount of debt, all have high unemployment. And even though the propaganda is out there saying that Europe is recovering and things are going well, we can see that is pretty much the opposite. Now, in Panama, they're going to have a banking holiday, and they're using the excuse that they're upgrading their systems. And if you notice, and I've mentioned this before in my other reports, that normally if they're going to do some type of banking holiday, it happens on a Friday. This way people go through the weekend, they feel relaxed, and whatever they're going to do and whatever money they're going to steal can be done over the weekend. And by the time people realize what's happening, it's way too late. And we saw some of this happen in Cyprus. People went to sleep. They woke up Saturday morning. boom, they couldn't get their money. In other places, the same thing happened, and they're telling everyone by Tuesday, October 1st, there'll be no problem and you'll be able to get your money. You can go to the bank and manually take out your money instead of using machines and using online things to maneuver your money. But you know what happens when something like this happens. People tend to run and try to get most of their money out. And this is why, going back who knows how many reports, I've always said that you should have some money and take some money out of the bank. Have gold and silver physically with you. Have cash with you. And because you never know when a bank or the collapse is going to hit. You never know when it's going to happen. And it's always better to be prepared and ready for something like this. And this goes on to say that, what are some reasons for a bank holiday? The National Bank of Panama said it is a system upgrade, and maybe a dollar revaluation would be coming soon. Maybe it is something more serious like a banking crisis like we had in Indonesia back in '97, or more recently in Cyprus. But the Clave debit card system has been taken offline. No wire transfers between banks and internationally unit until the 1st of October. And they are able to go to the local bank and take out cash. Now, I don't know how much they can possibly take out or if there are any type of controls in place, but we will see what happens with this story. Now, consumer sentiment plunges to a 5-month low, and this is the biggest miss since 2013. The first miss in 2013 and the lowest print since April, and the largest 2-month decline in 2013. This is the first consecutive monthly drop in 14 months and the largest miss versus expectations on record. And as Citi notes below, this is the exact same pattern we have seen play out in the last 2 cycles, and they suggest a significant downside risk to U.S. equities. And we've been having some warnings from different sources, like Wells Fargo was out there saying that the stock market is looking for a huge type of downward decline of about 16 to 20% or more. And I can't remember the other place, but there was another organization saying the same exact thing. And again, the Fed, the U.S. government right now understands that everything is declining. No matter how much they manipulate GDP, inflation, unemployment, it doesn't really matter, because they understand the economy, the U.S. dollar, is completely collapsing at this point, and the only thing that they control are numbers, the stock market, the housing industry, and they are doing everything they can to pump it up. And what we're seeing now is that the stock market has ended up in the red. I guess the high-frequency traders and plunge protection team tried their best to bring it back up, but they couldn't. Gold has moved up a little bit, but again, the central bankers are not going to let gold rise too much. They will continue to smack it down. If they see it going up way too much, they are going to bring it down. This way, not to alert the people that something is wrong. Now, we all understand that the U.S. government keeps talking about shutdown, and we have to fix this by October 1st, and Republicans and the Democrats are going back and forth and arguing, and they wanted to fund Obamacare, and President Obama is saying that he's not working with the Republicans. The Congress wants to make cuts, and they all know that they need to raise the debt ceiling, because otherwise the government just cannot function. Even if they do cuts, it's meaningless anyhow. The debt will continue to rise, and we all know this. And this is a huge show. Yeah, it might. They might go up. They're going to go up to the last possible minute and then make a deal, or an emergency type of deal that will let them go for a little bit longer. Well, who knows? Maybe they'll have it shut down for like a day or two, just so the American people can really feel it. And if the government does shut down, who's going to really feel this? Well, vacationers hoping to take vacation to Mount Rushmore or the Smithsonian museums or any type of landmark will have a problem because those will be shut down. Home buyers seeking governmental-backed mortgages, travelers who want new passports quickly, um, you know, and even tax audits might be slowed down, but that's not really a bad thing because of the shutdown. But other things like Obamacare, not affected. That won't be affected at all. Military, no. Prison guards, no. NASA, no. Um, all the salaries for the senators and congressmen and the president, not affected at all. And so this is what's really going to happen if they actually shut down. And they might furlough, as time goes on, furlough other government workers, but it will always be here in America so American people can see that this is what it looks like when it shuts down. But those billions of dollars heading off to Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, um, all these different places funding the Syrian paid mercenaries, I don't think those are going to stop. I don't think they're going to cut back on those. The NSA spying, nope, that's good to go. DHS, they're fine. TSA, no problems. None of that will actually have an effect on the shutdown whatsoever. Now, I know President Obama is trying to get his Obamacare through and trying to get this going. And there's been some problems with software glitch where the software is really not ready. And there are a lot of, it's really buggy where businesses can't register people for insurance, and some people are talking that this might put Obamacare off because all the systems are not ready, and they might put it off for another year. So we're going to have to see what happens. And I know the tech people are saying no, in a couple weeks it should be up and running, but probably something else is going to happen, and they might end up putting this off because of the whole entire computer system is not ready to run here. Now, we see Ohio State is getting an armored fighting vehicle. Now, why do they need this? I have no clue. And the only reason they would need this is if there are riots and they need an armored vehicle on campus to control students and to keep everyone organized. And again, if we look back in time and we see what has happened, a lot of times colleges and things like that do have riots, and when the collapse comes, they are probably thinking we need something that we can patrol around in and be safe in to handle people who are out there rioting and things like that. And we can see the police state is building. We see DHS having these armored vehicles. The police now have these armored vehicles. And you can see that with DHS, the police, the local authorities, they're all starting to look like military now. And we can see that this is all building up for one reason and one reason only, and that is because of the collapse that is coming, and this is why you would need all of this type of equipment. Now, since the terrorist attack in Kenya, malls, I mentioned this in my other report, malls are on a high terror alert, and there's even talk now of putting the TSA in malls and having people's bags checked as they enter malls. And we can see that they're using these these scare tactics and this police state mentality to get everyone used to checkpoints and different search. They're allowed to search you whenever they want, which completely violates the Fourth Amendment. We first saw it happen when we had 9/11, and you go to the airports, and now they can search you there. Amusement parks, when you try to go into amusement parks, they can search you there, and now they're moving it to malls and things like that. So wherever you go, you are giving them permission to search you, which under the Constitution they have no right to do. But they are using these scare tactics to keep everyone in line for the collapse and the police state, and this is why they continually do this. Okay, now let's move on here. The U.S. We understand that the U.S. is building up a huge force in the Pacific, and it's raising concerns with NATO, because the budget for military operations have been cut, and the U.S. does not have enough ships to cover all the areas, and NATO is very concerned about this. This goes on to say that the U.S. must recognize that even with its Navy declining in size over time, it will compromise an increasing percentage of aligned striking power, says the report, NATO at Sea, with U.S. armed forces increasingly focused on the Asia-Pacific region. There are growing concerns as to whether the navies of America, continental allies, are up to meeting the challenge arising from the general unrest on Europe's eastern and southern maritime flanks. And what's happening is the U.S. is building up their Asian-Pacific fleet and bases circling China, because they understand that when this entire thing and the entire escalation gets out of hand and war starts, they need to be ready out in Asia, in that area, to cover China with Japan. And they understand that when war breaks out, they are going to have a tough time, because most of the military funding is declining, and we just do not have the forces at this time to cover every single area. And it's like the Roman Empire, where it stretched out so far, and as you keep stretching and pushing, you are weakening the empire. And we can see this having troops in the Middle East, troops all over the globe to maintain the U.S. dollar and the empire of the United States, and it's getting much more difficult to continue and to do. Now, we do understand that President Obama, Russia, and Syria have come to an agreement with this chemical weapons, and it looks like they're going to sign off on this, and they're going to follow through, and Syria is going to start dismantling and destroying their chemical weapons. But in this resolution that they agreed upon, they left in Chapter 7. And this went on to say, what it says is, in the event of noncompliance with this resolution, including unauthorized transfer of chemical weapons or any use of chemical weapons by anyone in the Syrian Arab Republic, to impose measures under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. And this is what the U.S. wanted, but they wanted it spelled out that they can use force. But instead, they got the Chapter 7 within this resolution, and they seem to be happy with that. The lawyers of the U.S. government are happy with this. And what is this Chapter 7? Well, basically, it's that they can use military force. And what Chapter 7, Article 42 says is, should the Security Council consider that measures provided for in Article 41 would be inadequate or have proved to be inadequate, it may take such action by air, sea, or land forces as may be necessary to maintain or restore international peace and security. Such actions may include demonstrations, blockade, and other operations by air, sea, or land forces. And this is what President Obama was pushing for. He wanted Chapter 7, Article 42, and all the other articles that lead up to Article 42 in there to give them an out. Because in one of his statements that he made is that, the UN deal on Syria chemical weapons will be enforceable, President Obama says. He also added that there are concerns about whether the Syrian government would even follow through on its chemical weapons commitment. And we know the U.S. government has been talking about striking no matter what, striking, and they wanted this in this resolution, an agreement with Russia, Syria, and the U.S., and they got it in there. And we can see that as soon as Syria does something or there is another false flag, they are going to refer to Chapter 7. They're going to try to go down a peaceful means, and then they're going to hit up upon Article 42, and they're going to say, according to our agreement, we are going in. And we can see how this has been laid out. Okay, now, the experts that have to do with cybercrime and cyber attacks from the U.S. Cyber Consequences Unit is saying now that the manipulation of international financial markets will be the next evolution of cybercrime. By taking a position in the market and then conducting a cyber attack to discredit a company, criminals can make an almost infinite amount of money. And they will be able to manipulate the markets in any way they want, have them move up, move down, and things like that. And this is what they're saying here. Another concern with cyber attacks is the government shutdown. The longer the government stays shut down, cyber experts are worried about cyber attacks on the financial institutions, on government facilities, because as more and more people are laid off, the offices become quiet and there's no one to maintain the systems, and that could lead to a major cyber attack. And this goes on to say that as quiet offices, networks left behind by furloughed employees might allow malware that's already infiltrated federal networks, and it could be really bad if this does happen. Now, of course, the U.S. views Kenya attack a direct threat to national security. Now, any country that has natural resources like gold, oil, and just made an agreement with China to be the clearinghouse for the yuan, which will bypass the dollar, is a national security risk. So the United States is viewing now Kenya a huge risk to national security in America. So what they're going to do is they're sending dozens of FBI agents to Kenya to investigate the site of the attack and gather every piece of information possible. They're also sending other agents down there, and they are still looking at targeted strikes within Kenya because this is a huge, huge risk to the national security of the U.S. No, it's not. What's happening is Kenya has opened up the doorway to bypass the U.S. dollar for all African nations. China is making deals bypassing the U.S. dollar, and as the U.S. dollar is bypassed, that means no one will be using the dollar. If no one is using the dollar, no one needs the dollar. If nobody needs the dollar is done. It comes back to the U.S. We have flooding amounts of dollars in the U.S. We see hyperinflation, and there is nothing else they can do at this point, and they understand this. And this is why they are in these countries trying to maintain the U.S. dollar before it collapses. They know it's heading down. I mean, the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its value, and they understand what is happening. And in my last two reports, I've been talking about a huge false flag event coming, and we can see what's happening already with this Chapter 7, Article 42 with the UN and the agreement that Syria, Russia, and the U.S. has made. It gives the U.S. the ability to attack if they need it, because they're going to manipulate it in a certain way, which they're going to say, yes, this gives us the right to attack. If Assad doesn't do what he says, and believe me, the central bankers, U.S. government will find something that he didn't follow, but that will not be enough to get us into war. So what we are seeing now is more propaganda from Israel, saying that there was a report saying that Syria has a um, more advanced weapons than its chemical arsenal that could blindside Israel. And they are making this propaganda to push the agenda that Syria is a huge threat. They are also making the propaganda with Iran, even though the president is out there talking about, talking with Iran. I mean, think about this. 25 plus years they've been telling us that Iran is 3 to 5 months away from creating a nuclear bomb. Well, it's been 25 plus years and there's no nuclear bomb. Now, Israel is out there saying that Iran will have enough uranium for a bomb in 2 months. They are building this up. The president is out there discussing peace. Israel is creating propaganda and still out there warning people that Iran has nuclear weapons. Syria has other weapons besides chemical. And everything right now seems way too perfect that all of a sudden that President Obama is out there trying to make peace with Syria. I mean, we know he was forced to do it, but he's making peace and taking credit for the entire thing, is now making peace with Iran. This is the lull before the huge false flag event. Because what they're going to do is we're in the middle of making peace, and they decided, with the help of Al Qaeda or Al Shabaab or however they want to do it, with Al Qasim and the Syrian Electronic Army, they are going to create an horrific false flag event. Now, I mean, we had 9/11 where they wanted us to get into Afghanistan, and the way to do this was to bring down the World Trade Center and then start the war in Afghanistan, looking for Osama bin Laden. Now we have the president out there showing the world that he's going for peace. We have Israel making the propaganda. Everything seems too perfect. Something is going to happen so they can get into these countries, because you have to remember, after 25 plus years, all of a sudden they're not just going to say, oh, you know what? We're done here. No, they understand the U.S. dollar needs to be propped up, and in their minds, the only way to do this is to get into Syria and get into Iran, and also now take care of Kenya and any other nation that doesn't use the U.S. dollar or has natural resources which they need to get for themselves and take control over. This is why we see the new global terrorist alert again, because something is about to happen. Now, what will it be? It's going to be something big, because it has to wake up the American people. It has to wake up Congress, and they need someone to blame for this horrific event that's going to occur, and it has to be big. Do I think it's going to be in one place? No, I think it's going to happen in multiple places, almost like 9/11, where we're going to see mini explosions, cyber attacks, things that can happen that can affect a lot of people at once and make it seem like America is being attacked from all sides. This is why they built up the propaganda of lone wolf Al-Qaeda factions running free in the U.S. that can't be traced at this point. And they are capable and more sophisticated. They have better communications, and this is why they are building this up so much. And this is why it's so quiet now that the U.S. is looking for peace, and the news has died down, and they're building the propaganda overseas that there are terrorists out there. And you can see how this is all formulating and painting this picture for something to come. And if you haven't started, I would start preparing. I would get water, food, medical supplies, batteries, everything that we need. I mentioned this before, because we know something will happen And they understand this, and they understand this is what they need. They need to cover this up somehow because the Fed cannot taper. It's impossible. If they do, the entire economy implodes. They know this. They are looking for a way out of this. They do not want to be blamed for the collapse because no one will believe them later on to start the system over again. So they need to blame this on another country, and they can say they had nothing to do with this. And they understand that the economy is getting worse. Europe is getting worse. And really what they want to do is they don't want to taper. They want to print more money. And the only way they can do this is to blame this and have the economy collapse and then say we're coming in there to rescue the economy because we need to increase QE and we might even double or triple it to help with the situation. Listen, everyone, I will be doing a report on Saturday. Thank you very much for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.